Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So this is a very relevant presentation because I'd like to present the result of a collective work done by a number of engineers at Ifip, the goal of which is to assess the organizational and economic impacts of measures suggested in the EFSA reports to improve pig welfare. This is a perfect segue with the previous presentation. So, since the beginning of 2020, the European Union launched a review of regulation on animal protection, and this revision needs to take account, as we've seen, of the latest scientific knowledge, and it has therefore, the EU ordered EFSA to draw up 3 reports on farming, transportation, and slaughtering, and reports on practices of animal welfare for these 3 stages. The report's goal is to assess current practices that could impact animal welfare and to suggest corrective or preventive measures on these 3 practices. This was carried out to this work by experts on animal welfare with a unique analysis, which is that of animal welfare. So, in the report, we had to carry out assessment, mainly economic, but also organizational assessment of some of these proposals. So, of course, we've looked at 5 practices for farming, 3 for transportation, and 3 for slaughtering. And we've calculated the cost per pig, whether produced or farmed, whether transported or slaughtered, in both new and retrofitted installations, and the global or overall investment cost at the level of France. Looking at the assessment of the cost per farmed pork. This work was done by Valarie based on a method he presented here in 2024, based on quotations drawn up over many years. He looked at the cost based on a new building or renovated building, looking at the
en prenant en compte les indicités du bâtiment, de réévaluer annuellement le coût de ces places. Donc, il a comme ça, et si on s'intéresse à un coût de la place en rénovation,
slots, this increases the amount of surface area per animal, so we need to retrofit existing slots and develop new slots. For each scenario, we've assessed the amount of places to retrofit or renovate and the number that needs to be created anew. In these calculations, we have not taken account of the dismantling and demolition of
Une fois qu'on a le coût par place, on l'annualise donc avec un taux à 3% sur 15 ans.
So we've looked at the annual cost per place at a rate of 3% over 15 years and the cost per sow per pig. And we look at the rotation for each stage. In other words, at the number of times a pig has gone through a specific slot on a given year. And we have an investment cost in euro per pig and also a euro cost per sow, which is brought back to the cost per pig, dividing that amount by the amount of
Là encore, on a
on a yearly basis, which is 25.6 pigs per
et l'amortissement de l'existant, qui peuvent être très variables en élevage.
We've not taken account of the residual value and the amortization cost. This is an investment cost and not the total cost per pig. We've not taken account of operating costs. At the level of France, the assessment led to 960,000 sows with 13 pigs weaned per litre. This farming needs to have 2 batches in farrowing pens, 2 in door pens, 4 in gestation, 3 in post-weaning, and 6 in fattening. So looking at the levels here, it's 0.8 square meters to 1.2 square meters per integral slatted floors or partially slatted floors.
Donc, en construction à neuf,
on new constructions, the cost per pig is from 15.6 to 21.4 when we increase the surface area per animal, or up to 19.9 in partially slatted floors.
En rénovation,
for
qui sont les
renovations, in the brown part on the graph.
euros
The
par
cost
porc
goes from
sur caillebotier intégral. Il est nettement plus
3.1 to
important.
9.7 euros in integral, fully slatted floors, and in partially slatted floors, it goes from 7.1 to 12.8 euros per pig. So these are significant amounts. Looking now at what happens at the farrowing pens, we've looked at temporary confinement going from 6.5 to 8 square meters per and the impacts of free
qui permettent de réutiliser en fait les stalles existantes en chiffrant soit 2,25 mètres carrés par
stalls. So for the gestating
stalls, surface recommandée au sevrage dans les rapports EFSA. Et là encore, je ne vais pas détailler tous les chiffres, mais vous voyez en fait l'ordre de grandeur des coûts d'investissement. Autre pratique remise en compte dans ces rapports, c'est
what that was challenged in these reports is the amount of ammonia in the buildings with a recommended values in the stalls, 10 ppm of ammonia. So the idea is to either use gravity evacuation on a frequent basis or using liquid manure. And for new installations, it could also be scrapping. For the first two possibilities, we have a little investment. These are mainly inputs, but if we include scraping, then investments will become quite significant. We've quantified two hypotheses to reduce ammonia.
En fait, on va simplement couvrir les fosses existantes.
Low hypothesis to cover existing pits for the two techniques of slurry and gravity evacuation.
On a chiffré une fosse complémentaire dans la mesure où peu de lisier va être stocké sous les animaux et il est très possible en fait qu'on ait besoin de créer du stockage. Tout ce qui était
and then we've quoted also all the storage and spreading.
Autre point important, c'est la
important point is weaning. One of the suggestions to turn to weaning at 28 days. In France, 21 days is
en fait le passage de toutes ces truies d'un système
applies to 51% of the sows in France. They are weaned at 21 days. So the suggestion is to go at 7 batches over 28 days. This means we need to strongly reorganize our farming and build additional places for the farrowing pens and the fattening installation. So investment here is quite important and significant, in excess of 15 euros per animal. Last point, with respect to nest building materials, we're looking here at inputs, straw, and we could also use burlap, and that could mean an additional investment. If we look at the total impact, increase in the surface area, especially if
et l'autre point important, c'est le changement d'âge au sevrage.
And the main change is the change in age during the weaning period. Looking at transportation costs, many points are set out, including forbidding transportation in warm hours. So we need to focus all the transportation in a shorter period of time.
Ça peut aussi entraîner des stockages en
more trucks needed or lorries
pour les abattoirs qui travaillent en deux équipes. Et ça peut aussi entraîner des reports d'enlèvement dans les élevages. Et on a chiffré
staggering the removals, and this was quantified at 0.18 euros per pig or 0.12 euros per pig, based on the temperature that has been decided as a maximum temperature beyond which no transportation can take place. And we've also looked at increasing the surface area for pigs in lorries, with a suggestion to increase that space by 33%. That means you need to increase the number of trucks and lorries and drivers, as well as with an impact on emissions because of additional fuel that was quantified at 0.46 euros per pig. And finally, duration of transportation to the slaughterhouses have been called into question, and if we limit the duration of transportation to the slaughterhouse to 8 hours, that means beyond 8 hours, transportation is forbidden. This will have an impact on sows because some sows are exported or sent to other parts of France. So the solution would be to create either a centralized slaughterhouse in France or to increase slaughtering capacities in existing slaughterhouses. This was quantified at 11.11 euros per pig. Now,
on a une partie en fait des abattoirs du sud et de l'est de la France, du sud-est de la France.
Or southeast of France slaughterhouses. They work with animals that are produced and farmed in other parts of France. So if
qui arrivent dans ces abattoirs et on remet en cause en fait
the number of pig arriving in these slaughterhouses, and this calls into question the actual economic and business model of these slaughterhouses and therefore the entire sector. So this was not an aspect that was
globalement donc le bilan des investissements à réaliser.
Looking at the total investments to carry out for farming, transportation and slaughtering, I'll leave it to you to look at the details in the but the figures are quite staggering. The most significant amount for farming is the surface area on ground per pig, as well as temporary confinement of 1.5 billion for zones for renovated spaces, and you can see the figures here for new construction and for winning an investment of over 500 million
mais qui est à répartir simplement sur la moitié des élevages. Autre point que je n'ai pas détaillé avant, c'est l'abattage. En fait, il y a une remise en cause des...
Also, with respect to slaughtering, two slaughtering techniques currently used in France and in Europe have been challenged. So, if we had to choose one or the other, investments would be quite significant to the tune of 90 to 130 million euros. So, in conclusion, we have investment costs of several billion euros at level of France, and that cover only economic aspects. We've not taken account of current tools being used, unforeseen circumstances, demolition costs, the impact on the sector with respect to transportation duration. We also need to complete this assessment with the operating costs and impact on performance. And as you can see, the document, we've broached this topic. And then there's the issue of feasibility based on available surface area in farming
comment on gère les animaux
farms, and how we manage the livestock, and how we recruit staff
dans lequel il est
lorry drivers, because this is quite a challenging job.
On a ces résultats, en fait, les résultats qu'on présente ici constituent un ensemble d'éléments indispensables pour envisager les évolutions réglementaires. Et je remercie Inaport pour son appui pour cette étude.
I thank you for your attention and for the support that was given to us to carry out this study.